Bismillah. Assalamu alaikum. I am Dr. Muhammad Hanif from Department of Anatomy, Faisalabad Medical University, Faisalabad. Dear students, as the university is closed due to the COVID-19 pandemic, the administration of the university has decided to teach the students. Today I will start with the development of the nervous system. The nervous system consists of central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system. Central nervous system consists of brain and spinal cord, while the peripheral nervous system consists of nerves of the body and the collections of the neuron, which are called ganglion. The central nervous system develops from the neural tube, while the peripheral nervous system develops from specialized group of the cells which are called neural crest cells. First of all, we will discuss the development of the central nervous system, which develops from neural tube. During the third week of the development, neural tube starts in the form of a slipper-shaped thickened plate of the cells on the dorsal surface of the ectoderm, which is called the neural plate. This is present just cranial to the primitive node. As the development goes on, its edges gets raised up to form the neural folds, so the center area get depressed, and that is called the neural groove. Then the neural fold shows more rapid growth, and they start to converge towards each other and finally meet with one another. That fusion process starts in the future cervical region, and then it proceeds in a cranial direction and as well as in a caudal direction until only its ends, which are called the anterior neuropore and the posterior neuropore, remains in temporal connection with the amniotic cavity. These two ends, which are called the neuropores, they get closed on 25th and the 26th day of the development respectively. Dear students, the neural tube can be divided into two parts, the upper expanded part and the lower cylindrical part. The upper expanded part forms the brain, while the caudal cylindrical or the tubular part forms the spinal cord. The cranial expanded part of the neural tube later on shows three dilatations, which are called three primary brain vesicles. The cranial one is called the prosencephalon vesicle or the forebrain vesicle. Middle one is called the mesencephalon or the midbrain vesicle. The caudal most is called the rhombencephalon or the hindbrain vesicle. Initially, the neural tube is straight one, but as the embryonic disc folds during the longitudinal and the transverse folding, the neural tube also shows a journal curve, which is convex dorsally. Later on, two more curvatures are formed, one in the region of the developing midbrain, which is called the cephalic or the mesencephalic flexure, and the second one at the junction of the rhombencephalon and the start of the tubular part, which later on forms the spinal cord, and that is the cervical flexure. Both flexures are convex in a dorsal direction. The various regions of the developing brain becomes transitly subdivided by transverse sulci into segments called neuromeres. This segmentation is most marked in the region of the developing hindbrain, meaning rhombencephalon region, where the neuromeres are called the rhombomeres. A total of the 8 rhombomeres appears in the developing hindbrain, which are numbered as R1, R2, R3 and so on up to R8. The rhombomeres begins to appear in the early 4th week and remain visible until the 5th week of the development. By the 5th week of the development, the 3 primary brain vesicles have differentiated into 5 secondary brain vesicles. The prosencephalon divides into telencephalon and the diencephalon, while the mesencephalon does not divide, it remains as such. Caudalmost vesicle with the name of the rhombencephalon also gets divided into the cranial one, metencephalon swelling, and the caudal one, the myelencephalon swelling. So from 3 primary brain vesicles, 5 secondary brain vesicles are formed. At the same time, a deep furrow called the rhombencephalic isthmus separates the mesencephalon from the rhombencephalon region, which is called the rhombencephalic isthmus. At the same time, another flexure forms with the name of the pontine flexure, which marks the boundary between the metencephalon and the myelencephalon. And this pontine flexure is different from the first of the 2 flexures, that it is concave dorsally. This cephalic as well as the cervical flexures were convex dorsally, but this pontine flexure is concave dorsally. Each of the 5 secondary brain vesicles give rise to different structures of the human brain. The telencephalon will form the cerebrum, while the diencephalon will give rise to the optic vesicle, which will form the optic cup, which will give rise to the 3 layers of the eyeball, thalamus, hypothalamus, epithalamus, the neurohypophysis, while the mesencephalon vesicle will form the midbrain. Metencephalon, which is the cranial secondary vesicle of the rhombencephalon region, will form the pons and the cerebrum, while the myelencephalon will form the medulla oblongata. The pons the midbrain pons and the medulla oblongata are called the brain stem. Dear students, the lumen of the neural tube forms different parts of the ventricular system in the different regions. The part of the neural tube which later on forms the spinal cord, its lumen will form the central canal of the spinal cord. While the lumen of the myelencephalon region, which will form in the caudal part, it will form the central canal like the central canal of the spinal cord, while in the upper part its lumen will widen up and it will form the lower portion of the fourth ventricle. The lumen in the region of the mesencephalon vesicle will form the upper part of the fourth ventricle. So the fourth ventricle is formed from the lumen of both the myelencephalon as well as the mesencephalon region. The lumen of the diencephalon vesicle will form a slit-like gap with the name of the third ventricles between the two cerebral hemispheres, and the mesencephalon vesicle lumen will form the aqueduct of the sylvius, commonly known as the cerebral aqueduct, and that narrow canal will communicate the fourth ventricle with the third ventricle. The lumen of the telencephalon vesicle will form the two lateral ventricles, one in each right cerebral hemisphere, the other one in the left cerebral hemisphere. These two lateral ventricles are communicated with the third ventricle through the interventricular foramina of the Monro. So the ventricular system from the telencephalon region to this central canal of the spinal cord is very well communicated. The neural crest cells are population of the cells which arises from the edges of the neural folds, where they are continuous with the rest of the ectodermal layer. When the neural tube gets close, they dissociate themselves from that junctional point and migrate in a dorsal as well as in a ventral direction and give rise to a diverse neural crest cells have great migratory ability and the phenotypic heterogeneity. That is why some people label them as fourth embryonic germ layer in addition to the ectoderm, mesoderm and endoderm. The major derivatives of the neural crest cells are: number one, the ganglion and the glia cells, especially the Schwann cell of the glial cell group, of the autonomic and the sensory nervous system. They also give rise to the sensory ganglion of the 5th, 7th, 8th, 9th and 10th cranial nerves, while the parasympathetic nuclei are also derived from the neural crest cells, and this comprises of the 3rd, 7th, 9th and the 10th cranial nerves, while the parasympathetic nuclei, which are present very close to the wall or within the wall of the GIT, they are also derived from the medulla. Melanocytes of the epidermis. Next population of the cell is the calcitonin cells of the thyroid gland. Two of the sensory membranes which covers the brain and the spinal cord with the name of the pia and arachnoid, they also derives from the neural crest cells. Neural crest cells also give rise to the connective tissue and the bones of the face and the skull. In the oral cavity, they give rise to the odontoblasts, which are the dentin forming cells, while in the developing heart, they contribute to the formation of the conotruncal septum. In the face and the neck region, they give rise to the dermis, while the cartilages of the pharyngeal arches are also derived from the neurocrest cells. Smooth muscle cells to the blood vessels of the face and the forehead region, they also get derived from this population of these cells with the name of the neural crest cells. Histogenesis of the neural tube. Initially, the neural tube consists of simple columnar epithelial cells, which is derived from the neuroectoderm of the neural plate. Later on, proliferation takes place and a thick pseudo-stratified columnar epithelial cell layer is formed, which consists of the neuroepithelial type of the cells. That is why it is called the neuroepithelial layer. Junctional complexes at the lumen connect these neuroepithelial cells. Rapid growth during the neural groove stage and after closure of this neural tube result in the production of more and more neuroepithelial cells, and that constitute the neuroepithelial layer. And that neuroepithelial layer, which is now consisting of many and many cells, is called the ventricular zone or the germinal layer. With the closure of the neural tube, the neuroepithelial cells begins to give rise to primitive nerve cells called neuroblasts. This is the simple columnar epithelium, and that is the pseudo-stratified columnar epithelium. I have told you that with the closure of the neural tube, the neuroepithelial cells forming the ventricular zone or the germinal zone start to give rise primitive nerve cells called neuroblasts. These neuroblasts moves outward and give rise to a new layer around the ventricular zone called the intermediate layer or the mental layer, this green one. Neuroblasts become neurons as they develop cytoplasmic processes. It is clear from here that the neurons containing mental layer later on forms the grey matter of the CNS. Neuronal processes arising from the neurons of the mental layer grows outward and form a layer external to the mental layer, and that layer is called the marginal layer, and it contains the nerve fibers. As the myelination takes place, this gives white color to this layer of the neural tubes. Once the formation of the neuroblast ceases by the germinal layer, the neuroepithelial layer cells start to produce another type of these cells, which are called the glioblasts. These glioblast cells then move outward, reaching in the intermediate layer as well as in the outermost layer, which is called the marginal layer. Glioblasts consist of astrocytes, oligodendrocytes, ependymal cells, tanycytes, choroid plexus cells, and the microglia. But microglia does not develop from these neuroepithelial cells, rather they develop from the mesoderm, and those cells then move into the neural tube layer when the blood vessels start to penetrate into the CNS, usually during the last days of the third week and the start of the fourth week. Microglia and the macroglia. Macroglia consist of oligodendrocytes and the astrocytes. So astrocytes, oligodendrocytes, and the microglia are collectively called neuron. This is the enlarged view of the diagram showing the three layers of the neural tube. The innermost, the ventricle zone, acting as a germinal layer consisting of the neuroepithelial type of the cells, which give rise to the neurons as well as the glioblasts, with the exception of the microglia. Cells producing here, they develops into neuroblast as well as the glioblast. Neuroblast moving outward, reaching in the intermediate zone, which is also called the mental zone. Here the neuroblasts develop axonal processes and now called the neurons. They send out their processes outward and forming a outermost layer, which is called the marginal layer. So this layer contains the neuroepithelial cells, and then after cessation of the new production of the cell, it here contains the ependymal cells, the tanycytes, choroid plexus cells. Middle layer contains the neurons as well as the macroglia, meaning the oligocytes and the oligodendrocytes and the astrocytes, while the outermost layer contains the nerve fibers, and they also contains the astrocytes and the oligodendrocytes. As the development goes on, the neuroblasts arising from the neuroepithelial cells, they lose their uniform distribution around the lumen of the neural tube. The lateral walls of the neural tube becomes thick and thick due to the accumulation of the neuroblasts, while the dorsal and the ventral wall of the neural tubes becomes thin, and now they are called the roof plate and the floor plate respectively. These two parts, meaning the roof plate and the floor plate, does not contain the neuroblast, rather they serve as a pathway for the passage of the fibers passing from one side to the other side. The neuroblasts start to accumulate more and more in the lateral walls, so the lateral walls start to bulge more and more into the lumen of the neural tube, result its conversion into a cleft-like space. With the continuous addition of the neuroblast to the mental layer, a large ventral and a smaller dorsal thickenings become apparent in the lateral wall of the neural tube. The ventral thickenings are called basal plates and the dorsal thickenings are called the alar plates. It is very important. This division is very important as the alar and the basal plates are later on associated with the sensory and the motor functions respectively. The alar plates and the basal plates of the each side are separated by a very shallow groove called sulcus limitus. This one, sulcus limitus. This concludes the histogenesis of the neural tube, and from here we will proceed to the development of the spinal cord in the next lecture, inshallah. Thank you.